Hi there, it's been a while since my last video due to really being on holiday, and when I came back I couldn't resist building my new 3D printer, and having built it I couldn't resist making something with it. So I managed to find a design on the internet for a mounting for a gauge on the SC4 lathe, and I've already got a mount, but it's not a great design. I made it myself, but this design is really good. I modified it slightly by putting some sleeves in here and making tap threads in aluminium, but I'm really pleased with the way that's worked out. It's absolutely fascinating that a 3D printer can print stuff like that. Now that design I got off Thingiverse, so I'll put a link in the description if anybody's interested in making one. And I also made myself a project box for the SX2P Bluetooth controller, which used to be in a plastic sandwich bag. Now, since my last video, I've received quite a few comments, which I really do appreciate. And Jonathan and Chris provided an explanation as to why it is okay to use an end mill cutter in a tailstock chuck if you're taking light cuts. So if you're interested in that, it's worth looking at those comments. Also, Peter and Craig made some comments regarding when I was machining the piece in the 3-jaw chuck, I think it was, and I'd not offered any support at the back of the piece, and one of the suggestions is to actually use a chuck spider or make one. So I've sent off for an aluminium billet, and hopefully in the not too distant future I'll be making a chuck spider. And lastly, David Francis had a go at making one of these speed controllers or speed displays, and he did encounter some issues with it going into error mode. And now I get that occasionally, but not that often. But anyway, David modified the code, and he reckons it works pretty good, so I've included that code in the distribution list now. So if anybody who's already made one of these wants an up-to-date version, just drop me a line and I'll get it out to you. So anyway, in this video what I'm going to do is to machine the A-frames for the Stuart half beam. So for the A-frames I'm going to use the bench grinder to tidy up the bottom surface here. And then I'm going to use a hand file to clean up the outside and the inside faces. So I'm using one of these finer files here. Okay, so I've done some basic tidying up of the edges. I've not used any wet and dry at the moment, and I think what I need to do is concentrate on getting these bottom edges straight and use them as a reference surface. So I'm going to try and hold these in the vise like that, with that bottom edge in the vise, so I can mill this top edge, and then I'll reverse it round and do the same on the other side. Okay, so the base of this A-frame is resting on the bottom of the vise, and I've pushed this A-frame up against it. So in theory that should be parallel with the base. Now I've just touched the tool on this edge here and zeroized the DRO. Then I've moved the tool over here and I've measured it to be 2 thou out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mill off 7 thou. Once I've done that, I'll switch it round and repeat the process on the other side. I'm not actually sure I've got enough support there. So I need to rethink that. Okay, so I've just clamped them together and that feels a lot more solid. Just double check that the vise is nice and tight. Try again. And again on this other side. Well, they're looking nice and perpendicular. So what I've decided to do next is I'm going to reduce the width down to 1/4 of an inch. Now the width on these is currently on average round about 0.32 of an inch. So that's 70 thou over, divided by 2, 35 thou. So I'm going to take 35 thou off each side on the mill. So what I've done is just clamp the A-frame to the table using the normal vice clamps, and I'm going to take 10 thou off at a time, mill off what I can get to, and I'll keep on taking 10 thou off until I get to 35 thou. Then I'll reclamp it on the bits that I've milled and then do the rest of it. So that's the plan. And this is just showing the different clamp setup. Well, they seem to turn out okay. In the end I only took about 21 thou off each side, and that's left around about 10 thou for the pattern. So if I'd have taken 30 thou off, I'd have gone into the sort of like recessed bit. So I think they'll look okay once they're buffed up on a bit of wet and dry. So now what I need to do is to do some marking out for the for the holes. Okay, so I've come across a bit of a problem in marking out. The distance between the bottom and this hole here, which needs to be central to that piece, should be 1 31/32 of an inch. Now I've just measured it and it's actually 2.024 of an inch. So that's actually 55 thou too much on the end of this base, so I need to machine 55 thou off. So what I'll do off camera is I'll follow exactly the same method I did when I initially machined these, and I'll take 55 thou off both of the A-frames, and then I'll get back to you. Well, this seems to be a little bit more complicated than what I thought it would be. So I've established the centre of the hole here, and I've put this vise on the table exactly 90 degrees. I've also put this clamp here exactly at 90 degrees to the vise. So then I've pushed the piece into the corner and flat on this end here, and what I'll do is I'll clamp it, then I'll centre on this point here, and then I'll centre drill and drill through with an 1/8 of an inch drill bit. Then I'll remove the piece, I'll put this other piece on here which is identical and drill again that centre. Then using the DRO I will establish the centre point there for the other 1/8 of an inch hole. I'll centre and drill through with an 1/8 of an inch drill bit, and then I'll take that off, place that back in there, and then drill that again. Okay, so for this next hole here, I calculate that the position from this hole that I've just drilled on the y-axis is 27/32 of an inch. So that's 0.844 for the y-axis to move. And for the x-axis, I believe that needs to be moved 15/32, which is 0.469. Interesting. Seems to be quite over to the right. But I'll double check everything, and if it's okay, I'll centre drill and drill with the 1/8 of an inch drill bit. But I'll do all that off camera. Okay, so the two holes have worked out spot on. So now I need to mark up where the holes need to be drilled and tapped for the bottom. Now, so the method I've used is I've bolted it to this right angle, and the bottom is parallel or exactly level with this edge here. Then I've taken the distance from that centre hole here down to the base, and I've zeroised the gauge on that point. Now the distance between the two holes needs to be 1 3/8 of an inch. So I've divided that by 2 and set the gauge to that figure. I think it's minus 0.688. And then I've come round here, scribed a line. Then I've moved it to plus 0.688 and scribed a line at the top. So that's indicated exactly where the holes need to be drilled and tapped. Well, this might look a little bit convoluted, but I thought it might be easier just to bolt this bracket to the table. It's pushed to get up against the vise, so it's at 90 degrees, and it's just now a matter of drilling and tapping to, I think it's 5BA. So I'll carry on drilling and tapping the other 3 holes, but I'll do it all off camera. So I'm just working through the grits with this wet and dry with a bit of WD-40 on it. Well, I'm really happy with the way those have turned out. They've buffed up really well. So what I thought I'd do now is just make this spacer which goes between these 2 points here. And I've cut this bar 1/4 of an inch over size and just centre drilled each end, because I think at some stage I'm going to have to offer some support. And the spacer has got 5BA threads at each end, and the centre of it needs to be turned down to 1/8 of an inch in diameter. So I think what I'll do is I'll concentrate on that bit first of all. Well, I think this is the first time I've machined anything like this, so the approach I've taken is I've offered some support with the tailstock, this live centre. And first of all, I've used the parting tool just to cut 3 sort of slots in there. I didn't go quite to a depth where the diameter is 1/8 of an inch. It's slightly over 1/8 of an inch, because I thought 1/8 of an inch is sort of quite small really. But anyway, what I'm going to try and do now is use this tool here to cut this section out. Once I've done that, I'll switch it round and cut that section out, and then I think I've got a little round tool that will enable me to put a bit of a curve on that. So that's the plan. I can't quite get in with this pointed tool here, so what I'm going to have to do is just open it up a bit again with the parting tool and just carry on. But I'll do that off camera, and I'll switch it round and do the other side, and then I'll get back to you. Well, this is the first time I've used this little round tool, and it's just not touching there. So my plan is to move the carriage to the left, so I can cut out to that point. So that's the plan anyway. Well, that seemed to work okay. So I'll switch it round and do the other side. Well, I'm very happy with that so far. So what I need to do now is I need to turn this end down up to this shoulder, or create a shoulder. So I need to turn it down to a diameter of 1/8 of an inch. I can just fit it in that chuck there, I think. Yeah, I think we'll be okay with that. So now I need to turn this down to 1/8 of an inch in diameter. So I'm just cutting this to length, and then I'll tap the end 5BA, and then I'll reverse it and repeat the same process on the other side, and then I'll get back to you. Well, that was an interesting little exercise. On paper those A-frames look to be a doddle, but in reality I found them quite difficult to hold and mark up and what have you. But anyway, I got there in the end, and I'm really happy with the spacer I made. It's the first time I've made anything sort of that shape, and it's the first time I've used that tool. I'm really impressed with it. And overall, I'm really happy with the way it's turned out. Everything's nice and symmetrical, and it's starting to look pretty good. Hope you'll like it.